Hi, I'm Baronosa Phaidra of Phaestos, and my project is, my two projects are based on Minoan trade in the Aegean, most specifically with Egypt, but also throughout the Aegean. And the way that I got interested in this project was I actually saw this Egyptian fresco that's featuring Minoans bringing trade goods to Egypt. And this guy right here has a bundle of fabric over his arm. And so I kind of started thinking, like, what if I did some Minoan garb that had an Egyptian theme, like Egyptian textiles? And so one of the ones that I liked the most was this, the goddess Hathor. I loved the pattern on her dress, and so that's the pattern that I used on my garb. And so I put together a research paper as my first project that is how Minoan trade in the Aegean affected their culture, their art, and their fashion. And then I expanded on that and created garb that used that the feather motif on the goddess Hathor's dress. And so I used that to make my chinos, and I used silk. And I believe that silk is something that the Minoans would have traded along the Silk Road in the Mediterranean, because they traded, we think, at least as far as Cyprus, and possibly even farther, potentially India and Asia. So there are no extant examples for Minoan, for anything fabric or wood or anything like that related to Minoan, because of the environment. So it's a Mediterranean environment, very moist, just kind of eats up anything except for metal and stone. So all of our research it's truly experimental archaeology, because it's based on frescoes and pottery and seal rings and stuff like that. So we don't have any actual evidence of how they constructed things, anything like that. It's just, we're looking at pictures and we're making our best guess. So there's a lot of variance in how people do things. As part of the Bronze Age, I tend to focus on the Neo-Palatial period of Minoan history. So there's the pre-Palatial period, the Neo-Palatial period, and the Proto-Palatial period, or early Minoan, middle Minoan, late Minoan. And so mine's about 1650 BC, which was about 200 to 500 years before the big volcanic explosion at Thera, which it was the beginning of the end of the Minoan civilization. So if they hadn't used silk, they would have used cotton. We know that they traded cotton. We know that they grew flax. We know that they raised sheep and goats, so they would have used wool. And we think that they probably traded silk along, in the Aegean with different cultures that used silk. So, and there have been in some Minoan digs, there have been some silk moth cocoons found. And then there have also been some shells from the mollusks that they get sea silk from. Sea silk is very, very rare. There are only a handful of people in the world who are allowed and know how to harvest it and know how to work with it. It comes from the materials, the fibers that those mollusks use to attach themselves to rocks. And it's a super, super fine, like, thread. And so since we don't have any actual sea silk, I tend to use things like cotton. So I have this cotton, like, macrame kind of trim or fringe on my garb that I think, from pictures that I've seen of actual sea silk, it pretty closely resembles how they wove the sea silk. Now, they could weave it. There are examples of later, like Italian sea silk gloves that are more tightly woven together. But we think that the way the Minoans used it is they used it kind of like this for veils or shawls or things like that.